Good morning. Today Eva and I are here to discuss Chapter 5 in Brooke Ackley and Jackie True's book, Doing Feminist Research in Political and Social Science. Chapter 5 is titled Theory and Conceptualisation, including the literature review. The chapter covers how to conceptualise your question in a theoretical context and discusses how carrying out an extensive literature review in the disciplines relating to your question can help you more clearly focus your ideas and theories. The chapter is about making clear and informed theoretical and conceptual choices that enable you as a researcher or student to formulate your question into a theoretical argument. It is important to effectively refine and contextualise your question or problem so that others who may be from a different field or have no interest in your particular problem can clearly see what it is you are investigating and why it is an important contribution to understanding in the field. By referencing discussions in the literature, you invite those participants into the discussion of your project. The more narrowly you define your literature, the more narrowly you delimit your audience. Basically, you need to be able to effectively and concisely answer the question, why bother to carry out this project?
There are two types of theoretical research discussed in this chapter. These are referred to as theory testing research and theory seeking research. These of course vary greatly, but are generally characterised by distinctive research designs and methods. These differences are most clearly seen between qualitative versus quantitative research methods. Theory testing and theory seeking are two different approaches to the conceptualisation of a project. Which type you use depends greatly on the nature of your research. Theory testing regards the research process as conceptually linear, even though in practice this may not be the case. This type of approach applies more often to positivist researchers, however it is not their exclusive domain. It entails empirically answering a hypothesis and having an argument to analyse and refine from early on in the project. Theory testing research will often look at causal relationships involved in your study. In this, you'll be looking to determine the dependent and independent variable or variables. What you anticipate will generally be your hypothesis.
Theory-seeking research aims to understand and interpret a given phenomenon using conceptual tools developed while reflecting on the phenomenon in question. Theory seekers use the research process to generate a hypothesis, rather than reworking one conceived in the initial stages of the project. They align more closely with post-positivist thinking in that they do not conceive of the researcher as inseparable from the research process and surrounding environment being studied. For example, even though you may be studying a foreign concept of community, you're still examining it from an outsider's perspective. In this type of research, there is no set design or map. Each will follow a somewhat unique process that is fitting with the research question and topic they are investigating. Theory seekers must be explicit in detailing the theoretical approach and methodology they will use. Due to the unique and often innovative methodologies used, theoretical influences and the grounding in theory-seeking research are not always obvious. When using this type of conceptualization, your research process is unlikely to be linear. You will constantly be moving back and forth between theory and data and examining the relationship between them. Either type of research can benefit from being carried out with a feminist research ethic in mind. A feminist research ethic, as discussed in Chapter 2, means that the researcher is constantly aware of the exclusions, silences, power dynamics, boundaries, and relationships that impact on their research, and that they also remain critically self-reflexive during the research process. There is an emphasis in the chapter that while some forms of research advocate for a linear research designed to test theory, there will always be moments during the research process that will call the researcher to return to a theoretical reflection on their problem. A major point of this chapter, as with others in the book, is that the research process is necessarily messy and dynamic in nature.
The chapter breaks down the process of conceptualisation into 3 steps following the introductory and getting started sections. These introduce the importance and relevance of conceptualising your topic and literature review to a successful research project. These 3 steps, briefly explained, are considering the relevant theories of your problem or question from the disciplinary literature surrounding a research subject, developing the concepts from these sources to help make sense of your question or problem, and synthesising the concepts you have developed into a theoretical framework that is somewhat unique to your research. Ideally, the argument you develop through conceptualisation should provide a contextual understanding of your question, reveal patterns and linkages between themes and concepts that are important to the question, have explanatory power, be consistent, have internal coherence, and offer the scope and engagement with other contending theories necessary to demonstrate the significance and meaning of the project to others. These goals should not, however, be treated as a checklist of things that our theoretical argument must achieve, but rather it should be seen as a set of goals and aspirations for our argument. We as researchers are not striving to write the perfect theory to explain everything. What we are looking for is a theory that helps us to understand our question in relation to its context and other questions surrounding it.
While the chapter is written from a feminist perspective, the advice given is relevant not only to scholars and students working from a feminist perspective. The principles and advice laid out in the chapter can be effectively applied and add value to a research project based from almost any theoretical paradigm. While taking this approach to conceptualising research may be more challenging to researchers who come from more positivist backgrounds, it can still be a valuable tool for those researchers. Through critically engaging with their own projects and employing the concept of reflexivity, feminists would argue that this would in fact increase positivist scholars' objectivity through an awareness of their own situatedness within the research. For feminists and other theory-seeking researchers, it will be important if you decide to generate your own theoretical framework in the process of doing research, that a careful attempt to conceptualise the key aspects of your question using the language and associations that others have used will be an invaluable research in your future efforts to articulate your theory to the field. A point that the book makes that seems to come mainly from the feminist background of the authors is that as we engage with the process of conceptualisation and consider different theoretical perspectives, we may also begin to engage with the conceptual and political worlds of the people we are studying, what the chapter refers to as the subject participants. Engaging on a personal level with research subjects and encouraging ownership of the research project they are involved in is an almost unique component of feminist research methodology. Much of the evidence and examples featured in the chapter are also pulled from the experiences of feminist researchers. A significant wealth of knowledge has been drawn from the author's personal experiences and expressed to the reader as if they were communicating personal advice. Through our own engagement with the chapter, we did begin to wonder if there was perhaps a precarious line between productive critical reflexivity and challenges to previous assumptions, and a point where this may begin to undermine the researchers' confidence in their own ability to make relevant contributions to a field.
The emancipatory nature of much feminist research is also reflected in this chapter. This is done through the assumption that the research project being proposed will be of some benefit to a particular community, either at the global or local level. This is also a feature of bottom-up approaches to research, and such involvement can be vital in revealing new avenues for investigation and also illuminating silences and exclusions in the existing literature. Feminist research also encourages the consideration and/or inclusion of personal perspectives and experiences in their methodology, as feminists belong to the post-positivist school of thought, which insists that situating yourself in the research is more beneficial to the research process. How then should this apply to your own research? You should use theory and a comprehensive literature review as a supplier of tools to conceptualise your own research. When you have a list of relevant theories to your research, consider how each of these different approaches may consider your question, how do they differ, and what else may they question that you had not previously considered. It is good for you to engage with a wide variety of relevant theoretical approaches. This will help your research to appeal to a wider audience and situate your research within the field more broadly.